I arrived 15 minutes early. It was a habit I never broke, even when I started to notice my presence wasn't exactly welcome. The dining room was half set, streamers still rolled up on the sideboard, and catering menus scattered across the table. Jessica looked up from her laptop when she heard the front door. "Oh," she said flatly. "You're here." I smiled anyway. Thought I'd help with the final prep. I brought the wine Ethan likes, Pinot Noir from Oregon. She didn't reach for it, just eyed the label like it was a foreign object. Then, with a small click of her trackpad, she closed the laptop, leaned back, and crossed her arms. "We've actually been meaning to talk to you." My stomach tightened, but I stayed still. "All right." Jessica stood and walked around the table like a manager preparing to deliver a performance review. She didn't bother hiding the smugness in her voice. "We've all agreed it's best you don't come to Ethan's party." Silence settled like dust. I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "You're not invited. Ethan's been under a lot of stress. And honestly, your energy it creates tension. We're trying to keep things positive." Her words were perfectly measured, polished, like she'd practiced them in the mirror. I looked toward the hallway, half expecting Ethan to appear and laugh it off as some bad joke. But he didn't. And I realized he was home. I'd seen his car in the driveway. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Does he know you're saying this?" Jessica raised an eyebrow. "He agrees, we all do, that we was the knife. Her, Ethan, probably her sister, maybe even his colleagues. Everyone but me." I nodded slowly, the wine bottle still clutched in my hand. "Good to know," I said, setting it on the entryway table. Her smile returned. That tiny, triumphant curl at the edge of her mouth. The one she'd worn the first time Ethan told her I had a key to the house. The one that said, "Not anymore." I walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind me like a gavel. Not slammed, not loud, but final. And Ethan never came to the door. Never called after me. Never said a word. There was a time Ethan couldn't fall asleep without my hand on his back. When his father left, Ethan was only 7. Too young to understand betrayal, old enough to feel its absence. I took double shifts at the hospital running on caffeine and grit. On his 8th birthday, I baked a cake from scratch at 1:00 a.m., chocolate with vanilla buttercream, his favorite. I fell asleep on the kitchen floor, waiting for it to cool. He found me there the next morning and whispered, "Did you stay up just for me?" I remember brushing the flour from my cheek, smiling and saying, "Always." Back then it was just us. Mother and son, teammates. Every science fair, every school play, I was in the front row. I never let him see how tired I was, how some months I skipped dinners just to pay for piano lessons. Every piece of furniture in our apartment had a story, and most of them started with Craigslist and ended with me sanding down splinters. When Ethan got into UNC on a partial scholarship, I cried the whole way home after dropping him off. Not because I was sad, because we'd made it. Things started to shift when Jessica came into the picture. She was poised, confident, sharp in a way I wasn't. The first time she came over, she scanned my living room like she was conducting an appraisal. Her smile was tight, polite, calculating. "I didn't know you were a single mom," she said casually. "Is that a problem?" I asked. "Of course not," she replied, her tone already drifting. "I tried, Lord knows I tried." I gave them space. I never overstepped. I offered help with the wedding, kept my opinions to myself, even when the guest list had more of her Pilates friends than his family. But I saw the way she looked at Ethan when he hugged me too long, when we reminisced about summers at Myrtle Beach, when he called me with job updates before he told her. To her, our closeness wasn't warmth, it was a threat. Over the years, the calls grew shorter, the visits more formal. And somewhere between his first mortgage and their first baby, I became someone to manage, not someone to love. And now I was no one at all. The plan had started 3 years ago, quietly, carefully, in the back corner of my notebook, labeled Someday. Ethan had always wanted to visit Napa. It started with a wine tasting weekend he never took after Miles was born. Then a bookmarked article about vineyard bike tours. A throwaway comment during Thanksgiving one day when we're not drowning in soccer practices and deadlines. I listened. Each month I tucked away what I could. Tax returns over time pay the little I saved from switching to generic groceries. I opened a dedicated savings account at a different bank, so no one would notice the balance growing. I told no one, not because I wanted it to be secret, but because I wanted it to be perfect. By the time Ethan's 40th approached, I had $47,500. Enough for a week-long family trip, Ethan, Jessica, Miles, and me. Luxury lodge vineyard tours, cooking classes. I even found a boutique resort with kids' activities and couples spa packages. I planned it so no one would have to spend a dime. Jessica had always been the gatekeeper when it came to family logistics, so I started there. I sent her the outline, the lodging options, the tentative dates. Wanted to surprise Ethan, I wrote. Think he'd love this. She responded with one line. Thanks, I'll look it over. Weeks passed. I followed up. Nothing. When I pressed, she said, We're just slammed right now. I'll talk to Ethan soon. Then silence again. I assumed it was busyness, or maybe reluctance to accept such a large gift. So I waited. But when Ethan and I talked, nothing. Not a single mention. No excitement. No mom, is it true? Eventually, I stopped asking. Later, I found out why. A friend of mine whose sister works with Jessica mentioned they were planning a staycation birthday thing months ago. Apparently, Linda offered some wild trip idea, but Jessica said it wasn't realistic. That's when it hit me. She'd never told him. Not about the lodge. Not about the vineyard. Not about the money I'd scraped together dollar by dollar. The gift never even made it to his hands. It had been intercepted, minimized, dismissed. Just like me, I didn't cry on the drive home. Not because I wasn't hurt, I was. I felt it deep in my chest like a splinter working its way toward the bone. But I'd learned long ago that tears never impressed people like Jessica. Quiet decisions did. The moment I walked into my apartment, I took off my shoes, turned off the lights, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The reservation confirmation was still pinned to my bookmarks. Napa Ridge Villas, June 12th through 18th. A wraparound porch with views of the vineyard. Custom welcome baskets for the guests. Miles would have loved the kids' scavenger hunt through the lavender fields. I clicked cancel. Then I canceled the bike tour, the cooking class, the family portrait session I had booked at sunset. One by one, the pieces of the dream I had built crumbled. No one begged me to reconsider. No one even knew what was being erased. The bank transfer was the last step. $47,500 moved from the trip fund back into my personal savings. I stared at the number for a long time, more money than I had ever managed to save in my life. Not a penny of it had been for me. Until now. The final click felt weightless, not triumphant, not vengeful. Just done. Then I blocked Jessica. Not out of spite, out of necessity. I'd spent too long letting her dictate the terms of my presence. That ended now. It wasn't until nearly midnight that my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Miles. A text. Just one line. Grandma, why aren't you coming? Dad says you don't want to. I sat very still. My thumb hovered over the reply button, then dropped. Because the truth wasn't simple. Because I didn't know what version Ethan had been told. Because I wasn't ready to explain to a 10-year-old that adults sometimes lie on purpose and with a smile. That sometimes love isn't enough to stay invited. But I knew one thing: Miles didn't deserve silence. Not from me. So I typed, I always want to, sweetheart. I just wasn't asked. And then I put my phone face down and let the silence speak for itself. I didn't cry on the drive home. Not because I wasn't hurt, I was. I felt it deep in my chest like a splinter working its way toward the bone. But I'd learned long ago that tears never impressed people like Jessica. Quiet decisions did. The moment I walked into my apartment, I took off my shoes, turned off the lights, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The reservation confirmation was still pinned to my bookmarks. Napa Ridge Villas, June 12th through 18th. A wraparound porch with views of the vineyard. Custom welcome baskets for the guests. Miles would have loved the kids' scavenger hunt through the lavender fields. I clicked cancel. Then I canceled the bike tour, the cooking class, the family portrait session I had booked at sunset. One by one, the pieces of the dream I had built crumbled. No one begged me to reconsider. No one even knew what was being erased. The bank transfer was the last step. $47,500 moved from the trip fund back into my personal savings. I stared at the number for a long time, more money than I had ever managed to save in my life. Not a penny of it had been for me. Until now. The final click felt weightless, not triumphant, not vengeful, just done. Then I blocked Jessica, not out of spite, out of necessity. I'd spent too long letting her dictate the terms of my presence. That ended now. It wasn't until nearly midnight that my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Miles. A text. Just one line. Grandma? Why aren't you coming? Dad says you don't want to. I sat very still. My thumb hovered over the reply button, then dropped. Because the truth wasn't simple. Because I didn't know what version Ethan had been told. Because I wasn't ready to explain to a 10-year-old that adults sometimes lie on purpose and with a smile. That sometimes love isn't enough to stay invited. But I knew one thing: Miles didn't deserve silence. Not from me. So I typed, I always want to, sweetheart. I just wasn't asked. And then I put my phone face down and let the silence speak for itself. I didn't sleep that night. Miles' message sat on my chest like a weight I couldn't shift. My fingers twitched, hovering over Ethan's contact. I hadn't called him directly in months. Not because I couldn't, because I was trained not to. Jessica was always the one to schedule conversations to filter stress. But not tonight. I tapped call. 3 rings. Hey, Mom. His voice was casual, distracted, like he'd just stepped out of a meeting. Ethan, do you have a minute? Yeah. Everything okay? I hesitated, then went for it. Did you know I'd planned a trip for your birthday, Silence? What a trip. To Napa. I sent Jessica everything months ago. Lodging, tours, activities for Miles. I paid for the whole thing. More silence. Then No, I didn't know anything about that. I gripped the edge of the table. She didn't mention it. He sounded stunned. No, she told me you didn't want to come to the party. That you were being difficult again. Difficult. I exhaled slowly. Ethan. I've been saving for this for years. That money, that trip, it wasn't just a vacation. It was supposed to be a gift. There was a long pause on his end. I could hear him walking a door closing. His voice dropped. Mom, what trip? That's when I knew. Knew he hadn't just looked the other way. He'd genuinely been kept in the dark. I canceled it all last night, I said softly. I thought you knew. I thought you chose not to say anything. I didn't, he whispered. His voice broke in the middle, ragged and small. I didn't know, Mom. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part, one I didn't expect, just felt tired. I blocked her. I admitted. I couldn't do it anymore. He didn't defend her, didn't rush to explain, just said, let me call you back. Please. And when I hung up, I finally let myself cry. Not for the money, not for the party, but for the years between us that had been stolen without either of us even noticing. Ethan texted the next morning. Just 5 words. Can we talk? Just us. We met at the public library downtown, in one of those quiet study rooms with glass walls and two bright lights. Miles came too, Ethan said. He insisted. He brought a sketch pad and sat on the floor drawing spaceships while we sat at the table above him, as if our conversation couldn't touch him down there. Ethan looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. His jaw was tight, eyes shadowed, voice low. She never told me, he said. Not a single thing. I nodded. I know. I checked her email. She deleted everything you sent about the trip. She told my assistant not to schedule anything for June, said we were staying local. He paused, his voice cracking. I had no idea, Mom. We both sat in the silence for a moment. Not angry, just gutted. And the wine, he asked softly. The one you brought over. Left it by the door, I said. Did you get it? He shook his head. She poured it down the drain. My chest burned. She said you were trying to insert yourself again, that it was better to keep things simple this year. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. Ethan, do you believe that? That I'm the complication here? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at Miles. Buddy, he said gently, do you want to go look at the fish tank in the lobby for a minute? Miles looked up. I already saw them. There's only 3. Then without warning, he added, she always gets mad when we talk about you. The words hit like a brick through glass. Ethan froze. What? Miles shrugged like it was nothing new. She says Grandma makes things harder, that she takes up space. I reached for him. Honey, you can always talk about me. Always. He nodded. I know. I just don't want her to yell. Ethan put his head in his hands. That was the moment. Not the deleted emails. Not the drained bottle of wine. Not even the canceled trip. It was a child sitting quietly in the corner of the truth who made the war behind our doors undeniable and finally impossible to ignore. Ethan moved out that weekend. No shouting. Just a quiet call. I need some space for Miles too. 3 days later, Jessica showed up at my door, eyes blazing. You really think you've won, she said, pushing past me before I could speak. He left, and it's because of you. I didn't respond, just closed the door gently behind her. You've been manipulating him for years, she snapped. You act like some innocent mother, but you make him feel like a child. Like I'm the outsider. I looked at her, calm. I've never tried to take him from you, but you've worked very hard to take him from me. Her jaw clenched. You think you're the victim here. No, I said. I think I'm tired. She blinked, caught off guard. When I asked, did you start seeing me as a threat instead of family? For a second, she said nothing. Her mouth opened, then shut again. Something in her expression cracked, just slightly. You don't have to love me, I said, but you don't get to erase me. Jessica stood, frozen arms, crossed eyes, darting like she'd lost control of the story and didn't know what page she was on anymore. Without a word, she turned and walked out the door. This time, I didn't follow. I didn't explain. I just turned the lock. Not out of anger. Out of release. I didn't rebook the trip right away. For weeks, I let the silence settle. Let Ethan breathe. Let myself grieve what had been lost. Then, one afternoon with no announcement, I opened my laptop and started over. No Grand Lodge this time. No kid-friendly itinerary. Just 2 flights, 2 nights at a quiet B&B in Napa, and a small rental car. When I sent Ethan the details, I kept it simple. It's still yours if you want it. Just us. He called 10 minutes later. You're sure? I've never been more sure. We flew out 2 weeks later, no matching shirts or big family photos. Just jeans, windbreakers, and a handwritten list of places we never got to see the first time. When we arrived, the air smelled like rosemary and sun-warmed stone. That first evening, we sat on the porch overlooking a vineyard at dusk. I poured us each a glass of wine from the bottle they left in our room. He looked over, eyes soft. I'm sorry, he said, for not seeing it sooner. I shook my head. This wasn't about a trip. I wasn't trying to impress you. I just wanted to give you something before life told you it was too late." He raised his glass. "To starting over." I tapped mine to his. "To remembering who we are when no one else is talking over us." We didn't say much after that. We didn't have to. The morning we packed to leave Napa, a letter was waiting in my mailbox at home. Ethan must have forwarded the mail from his rental. It was addressed in crooked handwriting smudged at the corners. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper. Just one sentence written in blue crayon. "Please don't leave me, too. Miles." I sat at my kitchen table and stared at those words until they blurred. He was too young to understand the weight of what had happened. Too young to know what had been taken from him, not just from me. But he felt it. That night, I printed a copy of our rebooked itinerary, the photos of the vineyard, the B&B porch, the trail we walked side by side. I tucked it into an envelope with a short note. "One day this will be yours. Not the place. The piece. You'll see it for yourself. I promise." I addressed it in careful print and sent it to Ethan's new place. I didn't write from Grandma. He would know. Our last afternoon in Napa, we sat in the same spot we had on our first night porch chairs, angled toward the sun, the vineyard stretching out like a promise we'd finally kept. No loud voices, no passive-aggressive glances, no walking on eggshells, just the quiet rhythm of two people relearning how to sit beside each other without armor. Ethan swirled his glass, watching the sunlight catch in the red. "She used to say you'd always leave, that one day you'd get tired and disappear." I looked at him. My heart caught between sorrow and peace. "She was wrong," he added, "and I'm really glad she was." I didn't answer right away, just reached across the table and placed my hand over his. That seat beside me. It had always been his. She may have tried to occupy it with whispers and control. But love like ours, it doesn't vanish. It waits. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes for years. But it waits. And when the lies fall away and the silence is finally broken, it's still there. Steady. Open. Unshakable.